Team, welcome back. If you're new around here, my name's Reese. I'm a military officer in the Royal Air Force and part owner of Dowology. Now if you've clicked on this video, it's suggesting to me that you want to know more about Police Scotland. So stick with this video and stick with this channel because we're going to go through a lot of detail in the next coming weeks. So before we get started and stuck into this video, if you could do me a huge favour and give this a thumbs up, a like and subscribe to the channel, it really would help me out moving forward. So I thought it'd be good and interesting to go through the application for Police Scotland for police officer in a little bit more detail. I know there's not a lot of information out there on the World Wide Web for people to get their hands on, so it's important for me to be able to share what information I've got for you if you're interested in becoming a police officer. So this video isn't going to be an in-depth video. I'm just going to cover the basics for the application, but stick with this channel because in the coming weeks I'm going to do a really thorough, in-depth video just purely on the application. So let's just get stuck straight into it and start going through the application in a bit of detail. So section 1, that just covers your bog standard information, your basic information, your name, your date of birth, your home address, telephone numbers, etc, etc. Section 2 then starts to go, and it's essential criteria, goes into a little bit more information about yourself. That looks at your nationality, your residency within this country, medical requirements or medical standards, driving licence and tattoos. Now, like I said, I'm not going to go too much into detail on this video about that stuff. I'll do a full in-depth video where I really cover each aspect in a lot more detail, because I think a lot of people sometimes struggle with this application because there's not a lot of information to help you out with it. But then moving on to section number 3, now that's where the real work starts, and that's where you actually have to start thinking and structuring and planning how you're going to actually answer the questions that are going to be involved. So section 3, what's involved in section 3? Section 3 has 7 questions specifically, all designed to get to know more about you, the applicant. And the way that it's designed is that it wants to know more about your previous experiences, your skill set, things that you've done in your past, things that you've achieved. And this, I'm going to give you a bit of a tip here. This is not a time to be shy or to be modest, really in any sort of way. You really need to start to highlight what you've achieved in your past, what you're achieving currently, just to be able to sell yourself to whoever it is that reads your application. They're not going to be able to speak to you, they're not going to be able to see you, they're not going to know you before they read this application or whilst they're reading this application. So they really need to start to get a sense of what you've done in your past, what you've achieved, and ultimately who you are. Now, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to take your time with this application and really put in the reps. You really need to start to set aside time to look at the questions, start to really think about the questions and think about how you're going to structure your answers. Don't just start typing. Come up with almost small mini essay type paragraphs and structures of how you're going to answer that question successfully. What's also quite important to highlight at this point just now is that this is going to be your first introduction to example-based questions. So what does that mean? Throughout your career in the police, if you go for promotion or if you're going for development into other departments, you'll have to write an application. And every time you write an application, you're going to have to answer the questions with an example. So if the question was to ask you about communication or problem solving, you then have to reference to a time when you used communication or problem solving. And that's quite simple when you're in the police because you go to incidents and you start to reference from there. But what you start to have to think about when you're not in the police and you're applying to get in the police is start to think of scenarios, incidents, things that you've done in your past where you can reference the question specifically. So the Police Scotland questions and the application, they do change from time to time. There's certainly been a massive change in the previous application over the past maybe year and a half. So it is really important that whenever you're applying, make sure you go to the Police Scotland website, look through all the information they've got there and obviously get the most up-to-date application. Now, the most recent application has 7 questions, and these 7 questions are then made up or marked against the competency values framework, Police Scotland's values and the qualities of a police officer. And if we just go through the 7 questions and have a quick look at them. So the first one is question number 1, please provide a personal statement in relation to your application for police officer. And that's actually a lot larger question. That's 400 to 500 words, whereas the rest of the questions are all set at 200 words. So question 2 is, Police Scotland's values are fairness, integrity, respect and human rights. What values are important to you and how do you practice these values in your own life? Question 3, please describe your own development journey and how this has helped shape you. This could be educational achievements at school, college, university or other vocational training and work experience. Next question, a police officer requires to be physically and mentally in good health. Please describe what you do to maintain a good level of general fitness and health. Next question is, what preparation have you undertaken before making this application to ensure that you know what to expect and to ensure that you're prepared for the role of police officer? Next question, policing is about ensuring the well-being and safety of the public and our communities. Please describe what you have or what you would bring to Police Scotland to enhance our ability to keep people safe. And the last question is, please provide any other information you wish to add in support of your application. So those are the 7 questions, and if you think about it, those questions really cover a wide variety of your ability. It's probably really going to test you for you to be able to think of specific examples to reference against these questions, and that's important to remember. That's what you're looking to do. You're not just going to write a paragraph of 200 words about your thoughts of your development journey. You're going to specifically reflect on the things that you've done, the things you've achieved, the things you might be currently doing just now, and how joining the police, how becoming a police officer fits in with that development journey as an example. Now, before we even think about writing down our answers to these questions, we need to think about how it is that we're going to actually answer these questions. So if you think back to Police Scotland's values of fairness, integrity, respect and human rights, and also the police officer qualities, then being able to answer the question but also threading these values and qualities into your answer, it's going to show the marker that you understand obviously what's required of being a police officer, the values of Police Scotland as a whole, but it's also going to show how you reflect those values, how you incorporate those values, and how ultimately how you can then bring those values again to Police Scotland as a police officer. Now, some of the questions are really going to help you structure your actual answer to the question. So there's a lot of detail within the question. Let's have a look at one of them. Question number 2. Police Scotland's values are fairness, integrity, respect, human rights. What values are important to you and how do you practice these values in your own life? So when you dissect that question, you've got fairness, integrity, respect and human rights. You're going to have to refer to, if not 1, if not 2, maybe 3, or as many as you can in general in your answer. But you're also going to reflect to how you incorporate them and practice them in your own life. So when you actually look at the question, it's not just asking you a question, it's actually explaining how you should answer the question. And what you need to then do is take your answer and reflect it against that question and make sure you're starting to hit what it's actually asking you throughout your question. Now, I'm not going to give any specific examples of how to answer the questions in this video, but if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get the next video that's going to come out, which is going to go through the application in a lot more detail, and I'm going to give you a couple of my example answers of how I would answer these questions in 2021. Now, that's just been a very quick video about the application for police officer in Police Scotland. Now, one other thing I would suggest, again, goes without saying almost in any application, but make sure that once you've written it, put it aside for a day, maybe 2 days, reread it so that you can either tweak the sentence structure, your grammar, your punctuation, but also your spelling. Make sure you use a spell check. It goes without saying, but just make sure you do it. And also, if you've got a good sounding board, if you've got any friends or family that could help you out just to read your answer, to make sure that it sounds like it's a legit answer essentially to the question, use that. Use anybody you can just to read it and go over it. Ultimately though, if they're advising you to make some serious changes, have a little bit of conviction in yourself if you do believe that the way you've structured it is correct, and go with your gut instinct with that. But certainly speak to somebody if you can to get them to read it and just go through it with you. Then once you're happy with it, submit it, sit back and wait, and you should hopefully hear a reply relatively soon. One thing I would say, and this is a really good tip and bit of advice to keep the process moving nice and quick is that if you're putting down your references, make sure that you contact those references in advance to give them a bit of warning that they are going to be approached. It's not that being approached by Police Scotland for a reference is a bad thing, it's just that if you give a reference, say it's somebody from your college, a lecturer from your college, who you haven't spoke to in 3 or 4 years, and they might not work at that university or college anymore, and they might not remember you, that could really slow things down if they don't reply, and then you have to then contact them on Police Scotland's behalf, etc, etc. Before you know it, a month, 2 months could have went past, and there might not have been any movement on your application just because these references haven't been cited on it or can't actually remember who you are. So if you've got references, get in touch with them, tell them to expect an email or a phone call regarding references, and that'll just help you out in the timeline, getting it in and getting progressed and becoming a police officer as fast as you possibly can. And that's just a quick video going through the application for police officer in Police Scotland. If this video helped you out, if you could do me a favour and give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you look out for the next couple of weeks' videos, because they're going to be a lot more in depth about the application process and the application itself, which should help you become a police officer a lot quicker, a lot sooner and more successful. But once again, thanks for watching this video and enjoy your week.